Hi there, friends, and welcome back to the Why Music Podcast, the podcast where we explore different musicians and their music and musical concepts throughout history. Today's episode is very special because this is the first episode that wasn't actually written by myself. This episode was written by Kaitlyn Bell, who did some research on the person we're going to be talking about and then wrote to me asking if I would share the research with you all. So before we get into Kaitlyn's episode, just a reminder to like and follow and subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening to it right now. Today, we're going to be talking about a person who has been forgotten for too long and really deserves his flowers. He is known in some textbooks and some old writings as Master Juba, and today we're going to be talking about the life and music and dancing of William Henry Lane. William Henry Lane was an African-American man who was born around about 1825 in Providence, Rhode Island, which is located in the USA. He made his name in New York, even though we're not quite sure exactly how and why he moved to New York in the first place. Lane would dance in saloons and other underground clubs known as cellars. In these underground spaces, white Irish men and women would dance with black men and black women to the riveting music that their bodies and different instruments would produce. Lane was often referred to in earlier writings as Juba, due to this being a common name that was given to many enslaved African Americans at that time in history. With the increased attention that he received, he started to dance around the North at different venues and garnered more fame and more attention for himself. It is said that after he defeated another famous dancer whose name was John Diamond, who happened to be white, he gained the stage name of Master Juba and was employed to perform in blackface. Blackface was very common in America, and it often involved white folks dressing up as black people using burnt cork or shoe polish to make their faces look very dark. Many would then sing and dance, mimicking the styles and the music of African Americans at that time. This practice, as you can imagine, was racist, white people dressing up like black folks and pretending and mocking and making fun of black people. Unfortunately, blackface was very popular in America and in Europe too, and even though our story is taking place in the middle of the 19th century, there were many instances of people using blackface and minstrel shows all the way through into the 21st century. So people like William Henry Lane had to make a choice. Do I participate in this racist form of entertainment so that I can earn some money, or not? For many different reasons, Lane participated in these minstrel shows, and he would go on to dance with the Ethiopian Serenaders, a white minstrel group that travelled across Scotland and England and Ireland, putting on performances that exaggerated the looks and actions of African Americans. These shows involved singing and dancing many different styles such as tap, elements of jazz dance and step dancing as well. William Henry Lane was an incredible performer by many accounts, and he is credited with being one of the first and possibly the most influential person to help with the development of many different styles of American dance. Unfortunately though, in 1852, at about the age of 27, William Henry Lane passed away due to malnutrition and fever.
What made Lane want to perform with the Ethiopian Serenaders?
Well, there could be many answers to this question. One answer is that he thought that he had something to prove. As a black man in those days, many people already had a negative outlook on who and what he was capable of doing. By being around his fellow performers, who were often white, watching them cover themselves in blackface to perform to different songs and dances that mimicked and made mockery of his people, it couldn't have been easy. He may have felt like he needed to prove to them that no matter how good they thought they were not better than him. Another assumption is that the money and the fame was something that Lane wanted at the time. Before Lane performed around Europe, he would dance around the 5 Point district in New York in exchange for things like food so that he could just survive. It seems as though all William Henry Lane knew in his life and knew what to do was being a performer, and he did that regardless of the audience's race, or class or any other status. He used his body and his abilities until he couldn't anymore, and performing with the Ethiopian Serenaders gave him a chance to see the world. He was able to dominate in a heavily white space and pave the way for future African American performers.
What songs did Mr. Lane dance to?
That's a very good question. When William Henry Lane performed with the Ethiopian Serenaders, he would have had to dance to songs that were very racist and portrayed African Americans in very negative ways. In one song, a song called Miss Lucy Long, the lyrics make a mockery of black women, and one lyric actually says that, and I quote, "Tote her down to New Orleans and trade her off for corn," which makes light of slavery and black relationships, and it makes the assumption that if your wife was upset with you, you could just sell her and then you could be free of her. William Henry Lane would have to go out on stage multiple times a week and perform these kind of songs with a smile on his face and a pep in his step just to keep up appearances. As a performer, he couldn't really show that he was affected by the music, and even if he was, he had to put on a good show by mocking his people in front of a crowd of people who would never really understand what he was going through.
What made Mr. Lane's dancing so extraordinary?
Another great question. What made him an amazing dancer was his ability to move his body in such a way that many people at the time had never really seen before. When he was on stage, people automatically knew that they were going to be thoroughly entertained. Lane was flexible and agile, and he used every part of his body, including his face, to perform. During his short career, he included many different elements of dance moves that came from West Africa, such as patting Juba, which now is similar to what we might call hambone. He also borrowed some techniques from some of the Irish jigs and Irish performances and put his own spin on it. In many 19th century writings, people describe him as the most influential single performer of 19th century American dance.
Why should we celebrate his life?
Well, we should celebrate him because despite where and when he had to perform, he dominated the scene and he made it his own. He was very, very well known during his time as a performer, and therefore I think in many ways we shouldn't forget him now. Remembering that much of this music was created for people to dance to, when we look at the history of American music, William Henry Lane, we can see, has done so much for the dance community, and he really deserves to be talked about more, not just in dance spaces, but in music spaces too. So thank you, Mr. Lane, and thank you all for listening. I just want to say thank you so much for the work that Kaitlyn put into writing this episode. Not only did she introduce us to William Henry Lane, someone who, it turns out, is very, very important in the history of American music and dance, but she also helped us to understand a bit more about what it would have been like for William Henry Lane to do what he did. So I really hope this episode made you think. I really hope this episode gave you another understanding of dance and music and even American music history. So until next time, make sure you check out a little bit more about the influence that William Henry Lane had on American music history and music history in general. Take care of yourselves, subscribe and follow this podcast, and peace.